Network Entertainment.
And welcome to my podcast, the RJ Ledesma Podcast. In my podcast, I like to speak to business owners, visionaries, and entrepreneurs to learn more about how they think about doing business, what are their success secrets, and can we replicate those success secrets in our own businesses? And over here, I have a very successful young and young-looking team. We have the people behind BYC or Bayani Chain. Welcome to the show, Paul Soliman and Jello Wong. Guys, thanks so much for joining us over here. I've only seen you guys in the news, so it's so nice to see you now finally in person.
Thank you.
Thanks
Thank
so
you
much
for
for
having
joining
us.
us over here. And before we start off our discussion, I just want to congratulate Jello. We are recording this podcast on the eve when people find out that you were just designated or awarded as Forbes Asia, right? Is that Forbes
Yes,
Asia?
Asia.
Forbes Asia's 30 under 30. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Palakpakan naman sa studio. Palakpakan sa
Thank
studio.
you, thank
Guys,
you.
kayo dyan. Yeah, thanks so much. Great job.
Thank you.
So what exactly were you recognized for, Jello?
Yeah, we were recognized for our work at BYC Ventures.
Mm-hmm.
Primarily our pioneering project with Department of Budget and Management for the blockchain system because it was actually declared first in Asia.
Well, perfect. So what a great segue into our discussion
Yeah.
here today. Now, before we talk about blockchain and Bayani Chain, no, I think it's always appropriate that for many people, it will always be their first time to encounter blockchain aside from what they read in the news or whatever hype it's been given. So, Paul, I know that you are a veteran in this field of blockchain. So maybe you can break down a bit more for us. What exactly does the blockchain mean?
Sure. So, blockchain, the way I explain it every time is like, I always ask the audience if I wear color black today. So, if we are like five in the studio and you, RJ, will say, yes, of course, that I'm wearing color black. Technically, you are making a consensus. In a normal database, you don't make a consensus. If you comment in Facebook, it will go to the Facebook server and you will see your comment, right? In blockchain, you need five or more people or nodes, we call it nodes or machine, to actually say yes, that I am wearing color black today. And with the notebook analogy, like for example, I have a notebook here, then I write something, then I have five of my classmates check it and validate, this notebook says that it's your name stated Paul Soliman there, and everyone will see, okay, this is Paul Soliman, it's correct, etc. So what if someone lied, right? Like what if someone said, oh, it's not Paul Soliman, the notebook says it's Jello Wong. So that particular person will be out of the network. That's why if you can see, we're calling it blockchain because it's technically all the blocks are being grouped or being seriously generated on the whole chain. So that's why, in a way, it's called blockchain, something like that.
And having said that, okay, I understand that this is how it works, but because we are a business show, how exactly does it work that you're able to generate income from a blockchain?
Yeah. So blockchain in general, the use case that was like in a way very premier use case was Bitcoin. Blockchain is not a new technology. It's since from the 90s. The distributed computing or distributed ledger network. The term blockchain was only created by the community when Bitcoin was started. It was, the 2008 white paper of Satoshi, etc. And then comes 2015 Ethereum, and then it evolves now. How businesses do is like using blockchain primarily is really more on the financial side. Because if you know, the very first use case is really cryptocurrency that we're seeing right now. You can technically pay by a Bitcoin without even a third party that checks it. Bitcoin has its own constitution. It's its own bank, like a central bank, and anyone in the world, whether it's in the US, in the Philippines, it's technically borderless. So if you're an OFW and I've sent a Bitcoin, let's say I'm an OFW and RJ is in the Philippines, so technically if I send Bitcoin to you, there's no middleman. It's technically a peer-to-peer transaction between the two of us. So it's less it's less in terms of like third party payments because there's no middleman. No one is really having this third party facilitation payment like banks or other institution.
Okay. Now, having said that one, let's move on to what is Bayani Chain in the blockchain universe.
Yeah. So BYC when I saw the white paper, it was in 2011. Like so of course I'm still in college in 2008. So I'm still not working. When I drop out of school, so I work in Starbucks Philippines. Then of course exploring some sort of like everything in the internet because Google is so hot that time that I learned coding in Google. I learned coding in YouTube. I have a formal education. I have a thesis. I have a robot thesis, etc. But really, for an enterprise way of coding, it's really self-taught. So while exploring the internet in 2011, I saw the Bitcoin white paper. And I thought of like, oh, this can be big. This is the new way of really storing asset or whatever. But I'm not a finance guy, so I did not buy any Bitcoin at all. So fast forward 2015, I'm in a consulting firm. I know already how Ethereum will work. It's because I'm implementing enterprise system, ERP, CRM for businesses for the very long time. And fast forward to 2021. I still have this urge of creating an infrastructure, especially to put the data on the blockchain. I mean, we can maybe talk 24 hours in terms of the use case, but what we saw like in 2021 is we can store data that cannot be edited or cannot be deleted when that data is stored on the blockchain. So that's when Bayani Chain or BYC was conceptualized.
I see. So it's like forever, it is the color black.
Yeah.
To go back to the same analogy, forever
Yeah.
it's the color black. So very interesting to see your journey over here. And Jello, you also had a very interesting journey on your own because eventually
Yeah.
we're gonna find the story of how you guys eventually came together as a force for good, no?
Yeah.
Parang superhero team kayo, di ba?
Yeah.
So now, Jello, tell me a bit more about yourself. I know that you just recently just graduated from college just a few years
Yes.
ago. And this idea also that you have, or you're playing with the idea of the blockchain, and came in when you were in college. Tell me a bit more about that experience.
Yeah. So for context, I graduated in May 2024.
Okay.
I graduated from University of Asia and the Pacific. I took up entrepreneurial management. So I initially started Bayani Chain about second year college. The reason being is when in 2020, right, the pandemic hit, and so all traditional businesses were, a lot of them were shut down.
Yes.
Even mine. So
Even mine too. Yeah.
so in the past, I ran food and beverage business and all that. So from there, I started trying to study technology. And while studying technology, I discovered cryptocurrency. And then in cryptocurrency, I learned about, trading, NFTs and all that. And then I realized the technology behind it, blockchain, is something that we can use to uplift the Filipino lives. And at the start in 2021, it was initially for Filipino artists.
what do you think would uplift Filipino lives? Help me understand that
Yeah,
part.
so in the
because,
context of Filipino artists, which was the very first iteration of what BYC was, we believe that if we were able to put their digital artworks on a blockchain platform where they can truly own their artwork, the distribution globally would be so much easier, right? And then we landed our first major enterprise deal with GCash. So we essentially launched a lot of NFT blockchain projects with them. So we worked with the likes of Apple the App, Bito, Rin Barrera. So some of the biggest artists, upcoming artists in the Philippines. And what helped them ultimately was really the distribution of their artwork globally. So in the span of 2 hours, they were able to generate millions of pesos and getting their artwork across the world without any logistics hassle. So that was the initial idea that we had.
Okay. Now, you said that you brought yourself interested in blockchain when you were second year college, right?
Yes.
And you had an idea behind it. Tell me how you created that idea, put it into, I guess, words, and then finally how you got together with Paul over here.
Yeah. So funny enough, what I was doing was, I said to myself, you know what, I want to start a startup. I want to work on something big. And so when I initially had that idea of using blockchain to help uplift the lives of artists, I I made a Facebook post actually saying that I'm hiring a blockchain developer. And then one way or another, a friend of mine tagged Paul. So when Paul was tagged, I commented. I said, "Hey, I'm interested in your work. Can we talk?" And so we talked over chat, and I essentially pitched the idea of what I want to do. And that's when Paul said, "You know what? More than me giving you a service, maybe we can work on this together and become co-founders."
Wow.
And that's where it started.
Very interesting, Paul. I want to go back to you. I mean, you were probably you were working already, and you were doing blockchain. What particularly made you was it? Why did his idea resonate with you for doing NFT or non fungible tokens for artists?
Sure, sure. So I mentioned like I started my own startup around 2018 and 2019, and I'm seeing potential of blockchain again, as I mentioned, like in 2015, right? But there's not so much use case that time. So I was looking for a use case in 2021. Like NFT is booming. If you're familiar with Axie Infinity, etc. So we're seeing already that blockchain is not anymore for just tokens or cryptocurrency. It can really you can really put anything there as a digital asset. So when Alex, one of our co-founders, we met in JCI Manila. So that's why I'm saying like BYC is a JCI Manila business because most of the founders are from JCI Manila except from Jello. So when Jello came in, we have also a same idea that's really cooking, but we need in a way fresh legs for us to be able to do it. So that's why I said to Jello, okay, I will not do development works, but let's let's run this business, etc. Because I think you have more time than mine because I have also my dev house that I started in pandemic, which servicing Microsoft as a client. So that's why I have like maybe 3 startups that time. So
Wow.
I really cannot like do anything for.
So the processing work could not be anymore done, no?
Yeah, yeah.
Ubus na yung capacity, no?
So yeah, then I realized that we have the same vision. It's just the concept is like very different, but in terms of like first putting the data, which is artwork on the blockchain, and uplifting Filipino lives is really like part of the scope that I want to do.
Got that. And just so people get a better understanding, if an artist did not put his chain in the did not put his art. In the blockchain, no. So for example, I have this painting, right? I have a painting, and I can sell it to one person, right? That is the traditional way of making money. And let's say he's a good artist, he makes 2 million pesos from the sale of his artwork. Now, give me an example of if an artist puts his work on the blockchain and the difference of how he makes his money now on the blockchain.
Yeah. So essentially the idea there, right, is what we're trying to solve is instead of trust by authority, we do trust by code, right? Because when you have a physical artwork, generally that's issued a certificate of authenticity, which is issued by the gallery, right? And so your primary provenance behind the painting is based on who is in charge or who is in authority, right? But with blockchain, as long as the artwork came from the account or the wallet of the artist, that is already the primary provenance that we can use. That this artwork essentially originally came from the artist, which in fact is genuine. So then we remove all the potential forgery, all the potential like fakes or replicas that can be produced from that artwork.
Also, to add, that time we have what we call the royalty fee in OpenSea. So if an artist uploads their art, if that specific person who bought the art or the NFT itself, if that person sold it again to the secondary marketplace or even third or whatever, the artist still gets royalty out of that. So that's the beauty of it, because as Jello mentioned, everything is in the code. As long as the code says that in every if a person sold this, you're gonna have 10% in every
Royalty.
distribution channel that I have, something like that. So yeah, so that specific code that is in the smart contract, for you to be able to execute that, I mean, a physical way of doing this doesn't match that, right? I mean, it's because one, the distribution channel is there. Second, the smart contract cannot be edited. So even if the artist died already, it's still gonna generate money for the artist.
I see. I see.
So when when you essentially put your work on the blockchain and follow that like royalty framework, when you grow as an artist and when the value of your artwork appreciates, you're also incentivized as the original artist.
I see. I see.
Compared to like a traditional artist, right? You can make 2 million on the first transaction, but what happens when your
It's
artist
resold
becomes
again.
200 million, right? There's no guarantee that you'll get something from that.
Got that. And finally, how about you who develop bringing it onto that work onto the blockchain into NFT? Is it also in the smart contract that how do you guys make money because you brought it over there onto the
Yeah.
blockchain?
Yeah.
So we
we-
take a
yeah.
transaction fee for every artwork
That
or
was- that
NFT
was, yeah.
uploaded.
And that's part of the smart contract, I
Yep.
guess, no?
Yes.
So yeah, so that's actually the business model where you guys make money and then the
Yes.
artist makes money.
Yep.
And we're able to trace back the authenticity of the artwork back to the artist.
Yes.
So, and because this was recognized what you were doing, eventually, okay, it works, di ba? How did you now all of a sudden get to Gcash and say, okay, hey Gcash, look what we're doing? Did they see what you're doing?
Yeah, actually, they Mark Nunez, our friend from Gcash, reached out to us, and he said, "Look, I love what you're doing with the NFT marketplace and what you're doing for artists. Can you come and meet us to discuss about how we can do this with Gcash?" Right?
Wow.
At that time, I think we're the only NFT marketplace alive in terms of like not generative art, but mostly one
Like
of
real
one's
artists.
real artists.
Real artists, not the one that you submit online. So these
Yeah,
are real
yeah, yeah,
artists.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yes.
Making their work
Yeah.
and then just putting that online.
Yep.
Wow,
Yes.
very interesting, very interesting. So now you've got a use case. Now you're putting Gcash. So what was next for you guys after that point? So eventually, it was still called Bayani Chain at the time.
Yeah.
The first product that we have called Likha.
Likha.
That's the marketplace. Yeah, but the company is still called BYC or Bayani
It's
Chain.
called Bayani Chain.
Yeah.
And then when you were doing Bayani Chain, by any chance, at the start, like any business, there's always difficulty in putting this together. Did you experience any challenges putting it up? Like, for example, to be partners when you don't, you just kind of, based on ideas, it's not easy because you're still
Yeah,
working on
absolutely.
each other's. You have different working styles, you have different
Yeah.
values, and you've got to figure that out. And also getting the idea through. There are many challenges as well. What did you guys experience coming to this point?
Yeah, I think on my part, it's for us, we never really had the problem with working together, and that's why we're still going strong 5 years now, right?
But he's your work boyfriend, parang ganyan, no?
Yeah, work partner. But it's so interesting because the startup life is like a sort of like a roller coaster. Sometimes you're up, you secure Gcash, you got the project, and then suddenly, you're in that hardship again of figuring out product market fit. So we went through so many iterations before we got to our final like North Star as a
wow.
company.
Wow, I
Yeah.
see. How about you, Paul? What did you go through?
Yeah, sure. So as I mentioned, I have 3 startups that time, and I can say that I'm already around 10, 12 years already in the ERP industry or enterprise apps industry. I have big in a way network in terms of like Microsoft and other big company. My problem is how do I now incorporate that for me to be able to like run or co-run Bayani Chain with Jello and Raf, our other co-founder. So it's really challenging because as a CEO, I'm not so focused on that. It was like around maybe 2021 to 2023 that my headspace is not like really for BYC alone. As Jello mentioned, the company have really we had a lot of idea, and what we learn is like kill all the ideas that cannot be executed and focus on one idea that can be executed. Feasibility, in terms of capital and all, so we can really fly. Jello and I, we don't have major fights because in BYC the culture is like really, uh, it's it's like so amazing that we don't have ego that is like I'm the CEO so you need to follow me, etc. No, every founders doesn't have that in BYC. So that's why I'm super I appreciated the founders, the co-founders that I have, because they understand that I'm coming from a level of technicality that I want them to execute, but sometimes they don't understand me, right? But they keep on like leveling up with me in terms of, oh, we need to do our own blockchain, we need to research this, etc. And the good thing about kids, right, about Jealous Age and other co-founders that we have, is they are hungry to learn, and they're the hunger is there ever since that we created until now.
Wow. So, having said that, this is very interesting. So, what I'm picking up is that, okay, after the Gcash, initial Gcash success, no, there were a lot of challenges moving forward, and you didn't know that is this Bayani chain sustainable? This business model
Yeah.
for us sustainable moving
Yep.
forward? And there were a lot of different ways that you could have taken the company. You killed those other ways because they weren't the most profitable. They weren't the most scalable, and you had to find your North Star. How did you find your North Star? What does that mean? Kumbaga, pain point. Diba? What
Yeah,
is the
yeah.
pain point or that North
Yeah.
Star that you said, this is what we're going to
Comelec.
solve now?
Yeah. So in BYC when we started it, I think the vision is still that. There are so many iteration, but it's more maybe words because you can play with AI now on which branding do you wanna go or the narrative. But even before, what I told Jello and other co-founders is we want to be the one who will accelerate decentralization and digital asset adoption in Southeast Asia.
Ah, okay.
So that's the vision that whether it's going to be NFT or now infrastructure, etc. It's still the same. And we just hold on to that vision. Like, okay, we're not going to do ERP or CRM. We're not going to do development stuff like a dev house. We're not going to do that. We still stick on our vision and create product out of it. Now, when I created a white paper called Problick. So this is like used by Comelec for presentation of a blockchain voting idea. This was, I think, 2022 around or 2023. There was
2023,
a national election summit. So luckily, I was the one who was tasked to present how blockchain can help our election to avoid cheating, etc. Right. So of course, that white paper that my idea is like if we create our own infrastructure with the hybrid blockchain, which maybe I can dilute that explanation into a more layman. So imagine that our vote will go to a blockchain, and I explained blockchain already, right, a while ago, that if it's there, you cannot edit, you cannot delete it anymore, and nodes or I can say my classmate can validate if I voted for this senator or this president, right? Same concept, but my problem is you cannot really expose the data on the public blockchain, right? On a blockchain that is in public, like Bitcoin or Ethereum. So the proposal was create a private blockchain for precincts that will store my data and later on expose the mask or the encrypted data. So as a voter, I can say that if I voted to this senator, etc., there's a code, etc., that will be given to me that my vote is intact, and it was sent really to the central server. And that specific paper was out there, and it was read by other agencies.
You open sourced it, right?
Yeah, I open sourced it. Like I did not make it like a proprietary, or I did not patent the idea, etc. So yeah, so it was, I think, went to other agency to be read, like I think in DBM, etc. And
That's the Department of Budget Management,
yeah,
DBM.
and
Oh.
that's how the story, like that's how the adventure began in terms of us using blockchain on the government.
Oh, very interesting. So, you wrote this paper. So BYC was already being used for Gcash, right? At that time.
Yeah,
Yeah. And there's also a limit to the length of time that this concept will be viable, I guess. No.
Yes.
And that's why you were also at that time you were searching for things to do. And when you came up with this white paper, did it have anything to do with Bayani Chain, or you just said, "Oh, this is interesting. I want to write something up."
It's really Bayani Chain.
It was really Bayani
Yeah,
Chain. It
yeah.
was really
Because
Bayani Chain.
when I invest, or let's say I create a startup for technology, I always look at this 3Ds of mine. So one, is it already dematerialized, meaning it's easy to create already because all the resources are there. Another D's that I'm looking at is it already cheaper, or I forgot my other D. Demonetized. Thank you. Yeah. So meaning, is it cheaper to create now blockchain? And the answer on that is yes, because when Axie Infinity came in, Ethereum already there, it's easy already because of cloud computing as well. And third is really, is it decomposed in a way that without other stakeholder, I can already build it by my own. So I look at technology from an investment and creating a business out of it from that standpoint. And I saw that it's ripe already to create blockchain infrastructure or solution in 2021.
And then eventually, when you had that idea, why did you write up for the Comelec? What made you? What was your incentive to?
Someone reached out, right?
Yeah. So, I'm kind of like, in a way, part of, or deep in the cybersecurity industry. So there's a lot of friends of mine that, like, usually ask me to do talks and discussion, because again, I'm in the enterprise industry business, so part of that is really cybersecurity. Yeah,
Okay.
and blockchain, of course, it's not really addressing cybersecurity, but at least it enhances the protection of the data. So I was called by friends in Isaka to, like, oh, what do you think about election, and how do you enhance that? I said, okay, can we do blockchain in election, because I have an idea, blah blah blah.
Okay, so it's still. I mean, I'm looking at it from an entrepreneurial mindset perspective. It's basically okay. I have a problem which I know I can solve, and I often say, because I have this secret sauce, or meaning that you've got some proprietary understanding or very technical understanding of how to solve this problem, and that's where the framework for blockchain in election came in. And then what happened there was that the Department of Budget Management came in, right?
Yeah.
And what exactly when they came in, they said, "Aha! What did they realize when you sent the format for how you do elections? What did they pick up from that one?"
Yeah, I think it's more of the viability of, like, putting data to become immutable on the blockchain. So
Wow.
meaning, if DBM will put their, let's say, budget releasing data on the blockchain, so the trust of the public will like it will increase, because technically there's no central control when they do that.
Okay, so after that, when the DBM came to you, what did you guys do next? I'm curious to see what's the next step for you guys.
Yeah, just to explain BYC business model, we don't go directly to the client. So the distribution channel is more of us, like AWS and Microsoft, that partners resell our technology.
Okay.
So DBM went to like a public bidding and all. So of course a vendor bidded out, or won the bid, and they tap us for that specific execution.
And then you got to be used by eventually right now
other-
the Department of Budget Management
Is using our
is
technology.
using your technology
DP,
right now.
and other agency like DPWH, Baguio City, each other.
Wow. And so this is really the business model became a sort of like a public service model for Bayani Chain.
Yeah.
If you don't mind, help people understand what exactly are you doing for, let's say, DBM or DPWH, where the blockchain is employed.
Sure.
Yeah. So essentially, for DBM in particular, one of the things that we're trying to help them solve is, okay, so what they're putting on the blockchain are special allotment release orders and notice of cash allocations. So these are two very important documents that is essentially as good as cash, because when you have that piece of document, you can essentially release like budget, right? So the core problem that they were facing was, whenever the DBM website was like whenever it had downtime, people were accusing them of like changing the information within the special allotment release order. So, the current undersecretary said, you know what? Okay, fine. Let's put it on the blockchain so that even if the entire website gets deleted, they can always refer back to the blockchain, which the government and us have zero control of. They can always verify that the information is intact.
Excellent, excellent. So this is where you've been moving towards. So help me understand. If people were to look at BYC as a whole, what exactly? I mean, because it's what I'm very proud of. It's a local company.
Yes.
That's entrepreneurial and that's being built to go hopefully Southeast Asia, maybe
Yes.
beyond. Help me understand. What makes you, I guess, different versus other people? I mean, they're saying, "Oh, you're a Filipino." I mean, not to say that the people discriminate, but they might think, "Oh, you're a Filipino technological company. There are bigger players with more resources." But what is it about BYC that gives you this advantage?
Sure. So I think the combination of our experiences, right, as founders and culture are very like in a way relevant for us to build and also like maybe in the next 20 years we still have that culture for us to be able to build more. Now, as a Filipino company, I think the disadvantage first is like it's not Silicon Valley that we got all the funding that we need here. The good thing about that is we're more resourceful, right?
Mas may diskarte, kumbaga.
Yes, yes. I can call it street smart, right?
Street smart, yes.
So because again, my experience is I work with Microsoft. I was the first Filipino Microsoft MVP for business application and regional director that is here in the Philippines. In a way, I know how foreign company works, big tech company works, and apply that into a concept
Oh, very nice. Very
of a
nice.
Filipino
Yeah. Okay.
company that how they do their application, how they do securities, the stock, etc. So, and I was conveying to my co-founders, no, we cannot just be a Filipino company that is limiting ourselves because of our geography, right? So we need to be Microsoft, we need to be AWS or something. And who cares, right?
Yeah.
Who stopped us from doing that? So yeah, I think the vision, it's still there, and the culture is like that. I mean, we in the company, we don't believe that we cannot do this.
Wow.
And I think that's the fuel, right? That every big venture or big challenges that we have are being solved because of we really think big.
Hi, I'm Red Oliero.
Hi, I'm Andrew Bernardo.
And we are the Bago Matulog with Red Oliero podcast.
Members.
Yes, we are promoting our podcast and sana makinig kayo sa podcast namin. Yun lang. Thank
Please.
you. Yay. Please, we need money.
So part of Paul's everyday mandate as a CEO is to essentially take global practices that he learned throughout the years in both corporate and in his previous startups and apply it into Bayani Chain. So, we become a globally recognized or standard company. Yeah.
And part of this, I think, evolution for the companies, you guys have exploded into the national scene, I guess, now very recently.
Yes.
Tell me a bit more about that experience. This is because I just know what I read in the news, right? So this time is my
Yeah.
time for me to ask. So right now, Senator Bam Aquino goes, we need to find a way to fix up. I guess he started off with aside from the budget, he was really saying there must be a way that there's transparency across all. Make me kwento naman.
Yeah. I think the start of that was in
July 31.
In July, the FinTech Alliance.
No, we launched on July 31, 2025.
Oh,
And
yeah.
then 2 weeks after.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So we launched the DBM project,
Yes.
gentlemen. It was live already.
Okay.
I mean, whatever we're saying right now, it's not idea. Everything is live. You can check the link, etc. So after that, there was a FinTech Alliance event, and Senator Bam attended, and that was the flood control boom that time, the scandals and what's happening. So of course, Senator Bam said that why we are not exploring the solution or putting the budget on the blockchain, etc. And we were referenced on that presentation. And then that's the time, like, the blockchain now becomes in a way, the hot topic in every GCs or in every forums in the Philippine tech scene.
Because it was the first time that it was nationally recognized on a legislative level to essentially incorporate blockchain into the budget system.
Wow.
So it was a very momentous thing, right? But yeah, I mean that's what happened.
Yeah. And there's a lot of challenges on the way. And that's part
Yes.
of, the way I put it, that's how it's like to be an entrepreneur at the same time. And that's
Yes.
also how to introduce new technologies. Of course, it requires a different mindset. I mean, just to understand blockchain alone is a
Yeah.
different mindset.
Yeah.
And then also, the entrepreneurial mindset in approaching to solving this problem is also not easy to appreciate. But, can you share with us a bit more for us as people who are, look at it, what are the challenges you have to face and how do you address these challenges also when it comes to bringing blockchain to especially government service and to a national, there's two issues here, diba? It's application of blockchain and the public's appreciation of blockchain. And I'm sure you guys went through a lot of exciting times for yourselves as well.
So I have actually a funny story around that. So the number one challenge that we faced was, of course, demystifying misconceptions, right? Like just trying to address a lot of the misconceptions that were happening. So one story that I found really funny was in October when we were presenting in the Senate, because we were one of the resource speakers, to essentially explain what we were doing with DBM, with Baguio City. So, we were just essentially presenting. And it was so funny because during my presentation, I started receiving, kasi it was presented on live TV.
Okay.
So I was receiving message requests from strangers asking me, "Oh, sir, what crypto are you going to use for the budget transfer?" Or like, what are you going to use a stable coin and things like that. But I emphasized so many times in that Senate hearing that we're merely storing the records on the blockchain and we're not doing any transactions. But even then, I received so many inquiries about, "Oh, sir, maybe you can use Solana for transferring money across the blockchain for remittances," right? So there were a lot of things like that really that we really had to address, because again, we were one of the only blockchain companies to have actually implemented within the government. So it was also our duty to address the citizens.
Got that.
Yeah. I think before that, like 2 months before the Senate hearing for blockchain use or the proposal of Senbam, I was reading a book called Technological Republic by Alex Karp. He's the co-founder of Palantir, which is a government in a way technology startup
Defense
that time. Yeah, it is a defense tech. So one text that is really like, hit me is like why there are super few startups that are really helping the government, whether it's defense, whether it's whatever purposes. We do social media startup, we do maybe e-commerce startup, but there are few startups that really help governments around the world, not only in the Philippines. So I said, yeah, why not? Right? Why not create a startup to really help the nation instead of us doing fancy things? Because whatever we're doing is boring. Like blockchain is boring. It's not sexy. That's the reason why it's hard to explain. That's the reason why when they think about blockchain, it's always about the sexier things or the fancy things, which is cryptocurrency
crypto, yeah.
and meme coin and the 100x income, etc. or gains. But the underlying technology of it, like blockchain, it's really boring, right? So that's why it's hard. It's very challenging to us that when the need of or when they discover that blockchain can really help the government, so there's a lot of misconception happened. In fact, when we're doing, we already had a story about the Comelec. It was not really our solution, our infrastructure was not created for anti-corruption move. or anti-corruption tool. It was created for transparency voting. And if you can see, I can say that some people use that again, use that like idea against us, that we're saying that blockchain can really solve corruption, and we didn't even say that in any of my interview in news or even my blogs, etc. I didn't say that blockchain can solve corruption. But what we were saying since before is it can give us immutable data that no one can edit and no one can influence.
Got that. So very interesting right now that it's what Bayani Chain, what happened to Bayani Chain is, inevitably you brought the discussion of blockchain to a national level, and that's really what happened. And what's happening right now is a sifting through of what ideas, what is blockchain, what is not blockchain, what it can do and what it cannot do.
Yeah.
And since it's already there in the public sphere, my question is, what are you guys doing right now, Bayani Chain? So, like you said, very interesting. There's a lot of tech for everything else. There's, fintech, insurtech. Now you're doing GovTech, right? And what else are you guys doing right now with Bayani Chain or BYC?
Sure. So maybe I'll go to a more vision standpoint, and I think Jello can tell the details because he's managing the growth side. So the vision for BYC is again still the same, but now we're adding verifiable infrastructure and autonomous operations under our infrastructure and platform. We believe that later on, data that is real is going to be scarce because of generative AI. So
Interesting.
we believe that we need a infrastructure that we can anchor real data that is verifiable by normal Filipino, right? And in the agentic, era that we have right now, anything can go wrong in terms of an AI, saying that this is the real graduation or this is the real DPWH contract, right? It can be fake. Like 5 seconds, ChatGPT or Claude can generate
something that looks real. Yeah.
That is real. That's why the scams are becoming more intelligent, I can say.
Sophisticated,
and
right?
sophisticated,
Yeah,
right?
oh.
Because it can generate a GCash receipt. Like,
Okay, thank you. I just realized, sabi ko right now.
yeah.
No? Oo.
So again, going back to our core, that data should be immutable even with government or in private space. We are still banking on that idea. But now the vision is like blockchain, since it's decentralized in nature, why not like even the AI agents, right? We believe that maybe 5 years from now, my AI will pay your AI.
Wow.
It's agent to agent. And in fact, it's happening already in some of the blockchain that we know. We believe that there's gonna be a need for a control that when my agent go rogue, I will not be sued by anyone because it leaks a data or it pays a wrong check, right? Or it steals or it stole a specific payment to an agent. That's because our agents right now can really execute. That's the difference between autonomous workflow, a logical workflow versus an agentic workflow. It can act already. So what we want to do is to control agents, register your agent on the blockchain, says this is RJ's agent. The scope is blah, blah, blah. And now if it to go rogue, RJ can say, oh, it did not come from me. The agent really go rogue or it went rogue already.
I see.
So the holistic, payments, checking verifiability of the data, that's going to be the design that we're doing right now. That's the infrastructure that we're doing.
Fantastic. This is where we're moving to right now with the BYC. What an interesting case of where you guys are coming here right now. And I often ask, the way that things are moving from doing assisting the government and to more than just that one, right? Is what are the opportunities now emerging? I guess going back to wearing our entrepreneurial hat and seeing where you're moving blockchain with what you're doing and what it's able to do. What do you see as the opportunities emerging from the blockchain for Filipinos, and because of the blockchain, the ecosystem of the blockchain, what do you think are going to be emerging businesses that Filipinos can capitalize on?
Yeah. So on a business perspective, one of the things that we encountered with our clients, once the data that they have is verifiable, it's stored on the blockchain, the next big question mark is what do we do with it, right? And so that's where we came up with the idea of adding intelligence to that. And that's where AI essentially comes in. So the idea is to essentially build verifiable intelligent data infrastructure. And the way we see it is it's not just going to be for budget records, it's also going to be applicable to many other things like digital identity, even land titles, you name it.
Yeah.
Even tax audits
Yeah.
is something that we're experimenting with today.
Wow.
With private enterprises.
So for example, give me an example of how it's going to work. Because I'm in real estate, so one of the biggest things is, of
Yes.
course, the authenticity of the title, right?
Yeah.
That's being
Yes.
given to you. So when you put intelligence to it, you've got the title on the blockchain, right? Now, when you add the intelligence to it, what will happen now?
So let's say, for example, you have agents or the human agent, like the one who sells or the brokers, etc. So technically, it's hard for them to validate a specific land title if that's forged or whatever. So one opportunity there is business owner can have real data on the blockchain, right? And in a way, that proprietary data can be sold. It can be connected to any rails, like maybe how do I audit RJ? So if I want to audit RJ, you need to pay RJ because he's really giving you the real data, right?
I see.
So
I see.
an agent, let's say Ayala or a broker, can say, "Oh, you need to connect to RJ's wallet or whatever to see if he has his own land title, the actual land title.
actual
Yeah.
title belongs to him.
Yeah.
I
And then
see. Okay.
people can pay you because you share that specific data.
Yeah, and that's where you monetize now.
Yep.
That when people need to verify that data,
Yep.
then that's where you're able to monetize that
On an
data.
automated level.
So that there's need, and also eliminates a lot of paperwork, a lot of
Yep.
Yes.
middlemen. Actually, it eliminates a lot of middlemen because you
Yep.
just go
A lot of
go
middlemen.
here specifically, and you can find what you need. Really amazing.
Yeah.
That's what we're seeing.
We're seeing also that proprietary data will become business. So meaning my medical records. So if there's a research company that say, I want to research about diabetes, etc., or can we get your metadata without exposing it? Okay, this is my wallet. I'll expose this, blah, blah, blah. So data is going to be scarce, especially proprietary and real data.
Wow, amazing. How about in the periphery of the blockchain? Are there other industries that will arise or emerge, or opportunities emerging because the blockchain improves?
Yeah, one is stablecoin. So we're seeing that it's gonna be big. So meaning because stablecoin doesn't have border, imagine an OFW can convert a PHP stablecoin to USD stablecoin without with a minimal payment, right? So and they can buy already goods out of that, etc. And yeah, and that can really in a way remove a lot of like barrier to entry for you to be able to invest and to hold money on the internet.
Got that. Yes, please go ahead.
Another thing that we're seeing are the tokenization of real world assets. So for example, think of minerals, right? Imagine if we have, the Philippines has a lot of natural resources that are untapped, right? So if we are able to build a framework on tokenizing these assets and selling that remotely to different places around the world, to different investors, then we would be able to bring back a lot more money into the Philippines.
Got that.
Yeah, I think again, it's more GDP ish kind of like opportunity rather than affecting a single consumer, because blockchain is borderless. Like what if the the $1 trillion market crypto can inflow capital here by funding the PPP projects. And we're not even exploring that right now because technically we can tokenize projects and put it on the blockchain, and now other entities, foreign entities, can invest on that specific, and it's transparent.
Yeah.
They
And
can see that
yeah.
they can see that the infrastructure is being built. No ghost project anymore because all the updates is on the blockchain.
The beauty of it is the smart contract property, right? Like, if you transfer funds specifically for this project, it's clear that the audit trail will show that it goes to that project, and you can essentially monitor where your money is going. So blockchain will essentially help build trust within our country as well.
And I know for those things, really great ideas. We have just, I guess, national sovereignty issues to discuss. When you
Yes.
but I mean, this different thing. These are great ideas to manage because this manages the flow of the discussion
Yep.
moving forward. If there are people or companies that wanted to interact with BYC right now, they're seeing the potential, but they just can't quite see how it's going to work for them. How should they approach it, or what type of companies you're looking at to hopefully work together with BYC?
Yeah, because right now the focus is more towards the agentic operation. So again, we're doing boring stuff again to fully like automate specific operations like invoices, collections, etc., and putting those data on the blockchain and making it agents to agent or autonomously transacting on other business. Like again, this big or large coffee chain that we're doing, etc., they can pay already their supplier using AI agents, and the AI agents advising them that this is good to go, and the data is not really edited or tampered because it's on the blockchain.
Got that.
So what takes them essentially 3 months gets cut down to like 3 hours, right?
Oh, great. So what are the companies that you might be looking out for that might benefit from your boring work?
Right now we're exploring a lot in retail and also manufacturing, the whole supply chain, because we're seeing a lot of bottlenecks in terms of how the integration of their data needs to be connected. Let's say an e-commerce that distribute this up to the level of delivery, so it's hard to reconcile those data. But if they want to put that on the blockchain, then an AI agent will technically be created for those specific reconciliation. Then it's gonna be up to real time
I see
for
that.
us to reconcile it.
So parang if I understand correctly from the entrepreneur layman, I have a shipment. This shipment is on the blockchain. So sometimes it might get lost if you
Yeah.
put it in regular paperwork that goes around or
Yeah,
even
yeah.
online. But if the shipment particularly is attached to the blockchain, from here up to when it's delivered, all the items inside that are delivered to the correct, even sari store.
Everything
Yeah.
is recorded.
Everything is recorded on
Yeah.
the blockchain. And many companies in retail can actually benefit
Yep.
from
Yes.
that boring work that
Yep.
you're doing. But it also saves time for them.
Yep.
Correct?
Yes.
And also like we cannot really use AI if we're not really like explore or putting the right data there.
Yeah. The biggest problem with AI today is how credible is the data that you're inputting? Because the output of that, the interpretation of that data won't be as credible if the data from the very start isn't
It's incredible also.
isn't credible either.
Yeah.
So that's why the blockchain is still a very, very important component to what we're doing today.
Got that. It's been an interesting discussion. Some people's minds here right now, they're just racing to figure out and to understand
Yeah.
and to appreciate those things. But if you don't mind, I was going to ask you, just basically, first of all, your key takeaways that you want people to know about blockchain and what they should do, especially blockchain related to them, I guess, doing business. I'll start off with you, Jel.
Yeah. Well, for one, I think this is something that I always address in every debate or every talk that I give. Blockchain is not cryptocurrency. In fact, blockchain is like think of blockchain as like EDSA and cryptocurrency as one of the cars.
Okay.
So there are many tools that can be built on top of blockchain. So just because we're doing blockchain doesn't necessarily mean we're doing crypto. Number two, technology is a one-way street. So I think it's very important for people to learn how to use this technology, not just blockchain, but even AI. Because one way or another, it will affect your everyday life. It will affect how you apply for jobs. It will affect how you live your life 10 years from now.
Got that. Very interesting. Paul, how about you?
Businesses should explore digital assets in general, because I think there are a lot of like asset that is like stuck and cannot be turned into liquidity, right? So blockchain can give that one way or the other, like exploring other possibility of connecting our businesses together with the ASEAN countries. But of course, you need blockchain for the trust that I'm not putting fake items or fake businesses there. So that's one way to explore. I mean, we don't need the government for that. I mean, we can create businesses can create an association
That's right. That's
in
right.
the ASEAN nation, right? To like create their mini cooperative or whatever. But yeah, there's a lot of things that can be explored on that side.
Exactly. With the explosion of e-commerce really right now, blockchain might be even more important than ever for provenance and authenticity of the products which are going around the region. No?
Yep.
Oh, then the last question I want to ask is really, a lot of entrepreneurs or startups are actually listening. They're looking at you right now. Okay, you've done startups. You probably done good, didn't do good. You failed, you did good. And there's a lot of things when you put up a startup. If you had your collective wisdom from what you've been doing over those years, what are your 3, I guess, key takeaways that you want people to know about, putting up and running a startup business? I want to start with you, Jello.
The first one that I'll say, I usually say this in all my talks and all my interviews, is to follow purpose over passion. Let me break that down, right? So in a world where we live, we always talk about how, follow your dreams, follow your passion, follow what you love, follow your heart, right? But for me, identifying your purpose is what will help you, build something that outlasts you, right? And that's something that we've applied personally to our startup, because for me, my purpose is to essentially leverage technology with whatever business skills I have to essentially help change the world one way or another, trickling down into these companies and governments and different institutions, right? The second one is, I think yesterday when I got the announcement for the 30 under 30, a lot of people were asking me, how did you get it at 23 years old? Or, how did you, how did you get that award? For one, what most people see is overnight success, but the reality is we spent 5 years building this, and it doesn't come without challenges, right? Even up to now, we still face a lot of challenges as a startup. And number 2, don't let age define you. Even in a generation where people think older people should be doing this job, don't be afraid to do it, because eventually I earned the credibility and the trust of these institutions to essentially trust their systems to us, right? And I guess the third one, right? More on a spiritual level, right? For me, I am guided by my relationship with God, right? I think it's very important that your North Star, both in business and in life, are essentially aligned, right? And for me, it's essentially kingdom building, right? So kingdom building, nation building, they all come together.
That's the best blockchain to have right there.
Yeah.
And then Paul, yourself.
Yeah. So, having a business or a startup, it's not a battle of intellect. It's really a battle of stomach. I mean, you're gonna be punched hard. Sometimes you just have a 1 day success, then 1 month of like losing. It's really hard. I've run like 3-4 startups for now. I collapse some of those and focus on one thing, because I think human can only accept some beatings, but not there's a limitation about. But startup is brutal. I mean, entrepreneurship is brutal. A startup became cooler because you see Steve Jobs or Apple launches this.
Elon.
But that's like I think that's for show. I can see, right? Meaning when I say for show, you can only see that on YouTube, etc. But it's not the reality. Before they get there, it's really brutal. And so I can't say automatically that when a friend is like asking me, "Oh, should I have a business?" The first thing that I say is no. I mean, it's not for me to discourage, but what I'm just saying is like, if you want to have a business that you're serious with it, you really need to put 100%, drop everything for that. If you really want to be successful about it, and to be, again, brutally honest, having a business is like having a kid that in the infancy stage, it will cry, the baby will cry at night, and you need to, wake up even you don't like it or not, right?
That's right.
So, and you see it growing, but you see also pain points about, like, raising a child or raising a kid. So it's really a lifetime commitment. And in BYC's perspective, we don't really fascinated about idea, but we are rewarding the execution side of it. For us, it's like, if you find the product market fit that you have, execute that. Execute it. Execute. Idea is super cheap. Like, we have thousands of ideas
Ideas are
that
cheap,
we
yeah.
that we canceled already
Yeah.
because it's sexy, but technically there's no market fit, or it's not feasible. So we have that culture in BYC that if your idea will not, of course, pass the process that we have, then it will not go to our product list.
That's why we're not afraid to share ideas publicly.
Yeah.
Because it's hard to do anyway. I mean, it all boils down to the execution.
Got that. And that's why you talked about your 3Ds, di ba?
Yeah.
You got your I mean, if it doesn't pass your 3Ds, then
Yeah.
then might as well not
Yeah.
do it. Pakiulit yung 3Ds mo ulit. Gusto ko yung 3Ds mo. eh.
So when I invest into technologies, I always check if that's feasible already in terms of the cost. So demonetization, meaning it should be cheaper to build that. Second is dematerialization, meaning it's actually all the resources are actually there before you build. And third is decompose. There's meaning the technology should be decomposed that you can build it yourself. No stakeholder that can stop you on doing that.
Thanks a lot, guys. And with that, how can they get in touch with BYC?
Yeah, you can reach out to any of our, Facebook, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter pages. You can also reach out to me personally, Jello Wong. So I'm generally one of the most active leadership members. So you can reach out to my Facebook or Instagram, LinkedIn for any inquiries. And we're happy to set a meeting with you guys.
And with that, thanks a lot, guys, for guesting over here on the RJ Ledesma podcast. We will see you guys
Thank you.
in the next podcast. Thank you.
The opinions of podcast creators, hosts, and guests are not necessarily reflective of the official stance of the Pod Network Entertainment, its hosts, or other network programs. The content created by the people behind the podcast is personal and not meant to harm any religion, ethnicity, group, organization, company, or individual.